Today's video is going to be all about new niche fragrance releases. So if that's your type of thing, then please keep on watching. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it's the first time you're visiting. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Hayley and I review fragrances. So today I have an exciting video. I have 6 new niche fragrance releases and I can't wait to share some of these with you. There are some hot new fragrances that have just launched and I'm sure some of these are going to be anticipated by many of you. So without further ado, let's jump into the first fragrance. So this first fragrance I did receive ahead of the launch. I received an email from the brand asking if I would like to review their newest fragrance that was launching. And I said yes straight away because I have worked with this brand before and I really love their fragrances. So the fragrance arrived at my door, I opened up the box and my jaw hit the floor. I am a sucker for good packaging. I feel like it's an important part of the luxury niche fragrance experience. That's just my opinion. We might all differ on that, but it's important for me. Let me show you why I was so struck with the packaging. So this is the newest launch from Fragrance du Bois. And when I saw this pink velvet box, instantly I was dying to know what was inside. So if you don't already know, their fragrances normally come in black velvet boxes. Although I do have one fragrance which is called Lovers, which came in a red velvet box. It was limited edition in the red box. Some of them came in black boxes too. But I saw this pink box and I was instantly intrigued because at this point, I still didn't know what the fragrance was called and I had no idea about the notes. So let me open up the box. I'm just gonna open it up here. So the inside has the red velvet, which is a nice contrast against the pink. But when I saw the bottle, it has a pink metal plaque and it even has pink crystals around the cap. I think this is so pretty, as I've already said, and the experience of opening this up had me swooning. Now, this newest fragrance is called Sirene, and it actually comes in a 75 ml bottle. Their bottles are normally 100 ml, although I do have one 50 ml fragrance too. I'm not quite sure why this one in particular is a 75 ml. I don't know if it comes in different sizes too, but I received the 75 ml. And instantly, I was so curious about what this was going to smell like because the pink box, the pink label, I was thinking this is going to be a really feminine fragrance. That was my initial reaction anyway. So the first thing I did was spray it on my skin. I also sprayed it on my husband's skin because fragrances pull very different on each of us. Our skin chemistry is different. It gives me a little bit more of a rounded opinion as fragrances do smell differently on both of us. So let's close the box up and talk about Sirene. So I do know the notes of Sirene now, but I didn't for the first 2 days. And going in blind to a fragrance is a really interesting experience because you have no expectations. As soon as you know a note, you can pick up on that note. And I wasn't quite sure what I was getting, but on first spray, I picked up a fruity, creamy, sweet fragrance with a woody base. And it was pulling a little bit to me like strawberry, maybe passion fruit, maybe even raspberry. That is what I thought I was getting in the opening. And then the sweetness kind of dissipated after an hour and I was left with a really smooth, sensual, woody vibe. I get a little bit of the Cavort DNA in the dry down. So if you've ever smelt Cavort by Fragrance du Bois, there is a little bit of that similar DNA in the dry down, at least for me anyway. But now I know what the notes are. I completely understand what I was smelling. So I am going to tell you the notes before I go any further. It opens with pepper and cherry. So yes, this is a cherry fragrance and I completely understand where I was getting that sweet fruitiness from. And then in the mid, you have oud, incense and lactonic notes. Again, it's starting to make sense to me. And then you've got benzoin and moss and labdanum in the base. So really interesting composition. So now I know the notes and I can combine it with my initial impression. It all makes sense to me in terms of what I was getting. So the opening, I got and get a very sweet, fruity vibe. The cherry isn't too sour and it's definitely not a synthetic cherry in any way. And I still do pick up that kind of strawberry / raspberry vibe. Mix that in with the lactonic notes through the mid, and that's where I was getting that creamy fruitiness from. It reminds me almost of a cherry and strawberry smoothie. But then you have the incense and the oud. The oud is very, very smooth. It's not challenging in any way. It's a very likable oud fragrance, but very sensual at the same time. And Cavort from Fragrance du Bois is a very sensual fragrance. So when you combine that cherry and the lactonic notes in with the oud and the incense, it leaves for a very intoxicating, sensual experience in my eyes. You have the benzoin in the base, which makes this a little bit resinous and it deepens up the composition. I don't pick out the moss as such, but this does have great longevity, and the labdanum adds that kind of leathery touch, which I perceive to smell a little bit like saffron. Now, there's no saffron in here, but I do perceive that type of vibe from the overall composition. Now, when I first sprayed this, I was really shocked because this isn't the typical Fragrance du Bois DNA. It's very, very different from anything else in their collection. And I know so many of you are going to love this fragrance. I am very sure about that because I think this is such an incredible scent. Yes, I did receive this in PR, but I will always give you my honest opinion. And this is such an amazing, sensual, feminine scent, which can be worn by anyone, but it is slightly more feminine leaning. And I love the sweetness in the opening. Now that cherry smoothie vibe does start to dissipate into the dry down and you are left with more of a woody resinous base. You do get a little bit of incense, but not much. I can't say that I perceive the pepper personally. And in the dry down, it's still sweet, but nowhere near as sweet as the first hour or two. I have now worn this 3 times and I'm a little bit addicted to it at the moment. I'd highly recommend trying to get a sample of this one if you can get your hands on one, or testing it in a store. I don't know too much information about the launch of this yet, where it's going to be available, but I will link anything down in the description box below. But yeah, if you are into your sweet fragrances that are slightly creamy with a sensual base of oud and also benzoin, this one is definitely one to check out. So I am so pleasantly surprised at this new launch. I feel like it was very much needed in the Fragrance du Bois collection. I think the packaging is incredible. It gets a 10 out of 10 from me in terms of the overall experience. And we are starting off with a high in this video because this is definitely a big love for me. Next up is another anticipated launch, and this time it is from Amouage. And I have here their newest fragrance, which is called Love Delight. I received this one in the mail about 2 days ago. I wore this one yesterday and I'm wearing it again today. And this is part of their Secret Garden collection. So these are the other 3 fragrances that are in the Secret Garden collection. They have been out for a while, and Love Delight is their newest fragrance. And the packaging of this is so beautiful. It's a matte finish and the color is kind of peachy clay color in my opinion. You have this beigey cream lid and detailing with a peach crystal on the top. I can't fault Amouage packaging. I always think it's very chic, understated, but very, very chic. Now, I have only seen 2 reviews on this thus far, and both of those reviews were very different. So I was going into this with a very open mind. I didn't know what to expect. And I'm sure you already know about Amouage Guidance. It is probably the most popular fragrance to have launched in the last few years. So I think there was a lot of anticipation for this launch, and one reviewer said that this was the new It Girl fragrance. So I was super, super curious. Now, on first impression, it wasn't what I was expecting. And I think that is because a lot of Amouage fragrances have a slight challenging vibe about them. They are quite unique. They have some kind of different edge, whereas I feel like Love Delight is a very approachable, almost mass appealing scent, as are the other fragrances in the Secret Garden collection actually. So this fits perfectly. My instant impression when I tried this on the skin yesterday is this would make the most fantastic bridal scent. Now, I saw the notes before I received this fragrance and I was expecting this to be a little gourmand, and I don't feel like it's a gourmand. It does have a slight gourmand touch, but I would call this more of a floral fragrance. The florals in here smell incredibly realistic, so beautifully done in my opinion, but I don't pick out as much of the gourmand notes. So this features rum and cacao. I do get a little bit of that rum. I can't say that I get the cacao personally, but I do get a lot of heliotrope, and that has this almost nutty quality to it. And it leaves you with this creamy almondy vibe, which I did see another reviewer mention, and I totally get that almondy vibe from this too. Now there is a little bit of bite in the opening. There is a ginger note, not too much, but I get a little bit of bite in the opening. But the notes that are most prominent to me are the heliotrope and the jasmine. This is definitely jasmine dominant to my nose. I get a little bit of rose and a little bit of mandarin, but not too much at all. And then I do get that sweet, boozy rum in the dry down, but again, it's not a boozy fragrance as such. It's just a nice little touch. There's some vanilla in the base too, but it's not a sweet sugary vanilla. It's very chic and classy in my opinion, and just adds a bit of creaminess to the overall composition, which complements the heliotrope and that nutty vibe that gives. At this stage, I'm not getting the cacao. Bear in mind that I've only tried this twice thus far, so I need to play around with it a little bit more. It doesn't have any kind of unique edge to it, no challenging notes to my nose. I would say this is a jasmine and heliotrope forward fragrance, probably more heliotrope if I'm being honest, with a sweet edge. You get a little bit of the booziness and a little bit of that ginger, but those are the standout notes to me. As I've already mentioned as well, I do think this would make a fantastic bridal scent. I feel like this could make a great signature scent for so many people too. But if you're expecting a gourmand fragrance and you're expecting something super unique like Guidance was, then you might be a little bit disappointed. So do sample this first, but I think this is a fantastic new release. Definitely try and sample it first. It's an extremely classy floral, but it does have a very likable, mass appealing DNA. This top is driving me insane. It keeps rolling down, but let's move forward. The next fragrance I have is the newest release from BDK. And I have quite a big BDK collection. I do really love the house. And when I read the notes of this, I thought this was going to be a fragrance that I absolutely loved because it features iris and musk, two of my favorite notes, but I didn't know what to expect. Now, my first impressions of this on skin is it was a very beautiful, chic, Parisian style fragrance. Very classic in terms of perfumery. It kind of suits almost that Chanel vibe in terms of classic perfumery. In the notes, this has orange blossom, iris, tonka bean, musk, ambroxan, pepper. But how this pulls to me is very aldehydic, very classic. I do get the ambroxan feel from it. I do actually get the iris and the pink pepper, but it's a very floral fragrance. Now, my opinions on this are I love the first couple of hours in terms of wear, but the dry down is a little bit less desirable for my personal taste. And that is purely because I don't typically gravitate towards classic perfumery. I don't typically gravitate towards aldehydes either. I find aldehydes very, very challenging. Now, whilst the notes don't suggest aldehydes, that is the type of vibe I personally get from the overall experience. I'm not getting the tonka bean. There's even some oud in the base. I'm not getting that either. I get very heavy florals, specifically white florals. I think the opening is very, very pretty, but it's the dry down for me that doesn't quite do it on my personal skin chemistry. Now, I love how it dries down on my husband. So again, skin chemistry will always come into play. But for me, this is a little bit too classic and classy. Maybe I'm not a classy gal, but I do feel like this one will be very popular for those of you that like really classic perfumery, those of you that like your floral dominant fragrances with an airy, almost aldehydic feel. I would love to hear your experiences with this fragrance because your experience will be probably different to mine. We will all perceive notes very differently, but I wanted to give my honest opinion on this because it's not necessarily a fragrance I will be reaching for just because it's not my typical style, but I do think this is a very classy, Parisian feeling fragrance. The next new fragrance is from Sospiro, and this one is called Maraschino. And I remember seeing the notes of this one thinking, I need to try it. Now, cherry isn't normally my favorite note. I've been warming to it recently, but I don't always love cherry fragrances. And this is called Maraschino, so of course it was going to be cherry forward. And on my skin, I get the most beautiful almondy amaretto style cherry. Really, really delicious. It is definitely a sexy cherry scent. If you like Duchessa by Gritty, I think you will absolutely adore Maraschino. I think this is a fantastic new release and it has the most insane longevity, as do all Sospiro fragrances. They are very, very strong. Now this features quite a lot of notes, but how I perceive this is cherry, of course, and it's a sour, dark cherry. I get lots and lots of almond. It's fluffy, yet at the same time, it's got that sensual kind of cherry saffron vibe about it. I believe this doesn't even have saffron listed, but again, I pick up a kind of saffron vibe in the composition. It also has a strawberry note, which I am picking up on, giving a beautiful sweetness to the overall fragrance. The peach gives it a juiciness too. There's some tonka bean, a big dose of heliotrope, which adds to that nuttiness of the almond note. There's some green apple giving it some bite. You get lots of musk in the dry down, but I do pick up a saffron note. Again, saffron is not listed, but I am getting it. And I don't know if it is because I seem to associate certain types of cherry fragrances with saffron. It's probably just in my head. But this is a great cherry fragrance. If you are looking for a cherry that has amazing longevity, also that has amazing projection, that's sweet all the way through to the dry down, but still has a dense, thick base, this is one that you will want to sample. Now, I don't know how much wear I'm going to get out of this because, as I've already mentioned, cherry isn't typically my normal type of scent profile, but I definitely will wear it, but it's not going to be a fragrance I reach for all the time. But that being said, I do feel like it's a fantastic release. The last fragrance is Valhalla, and I remember seeing the notes of this on Fragrantica and my mouth was watering at the sight of the notes. I'm going to read you the notes from my phone so you can understand my feelings. The top notes are mango, mandarin, bergamot, and pear. Middle notes are jasmine, cashmere wood, and cedarwood, and base notes are vanilla, amber, tonka bean, and amber wood. And I love me a mango fragrance. So when I first sampled this, I definitely got mango straight away. And I sampled this first on paper because I was already sampling another fragrance that I received that same day. So I was getting the mango instantly, and I was getting the pear and the mandarin too. I was getting a lot of musk on paper, which I was a little bit shocked at. And overall, it was very strong. So the next day, I then tried it on my skin. And I have to say, I didn't really love how this smells on my skin. And there is a reason for that. And I think it's just how it pulls on my skin chemistry. But this does hint at that Herba Pura DNA. And if you watch my channel, you will know that Herba Pura does not work for me. Something about the fruity notes combined with the musk I find really, really challenging and a little bit off-putting. And I do get that type of DNA with Valhalla. Granted, I do pick up more of a juicy mango and pear in the opening, but this is really strong and heady for me, at least anyway. I don't get the vanilla, I don't get the tonka bean. I just get the really strong, fruity, musky vibe. And it must be just some way I perceive certain types of notes. And I'm sure not all of you will have the same experience. But for me, this isn't the type of fragrance I would personally reach for and wear. But I still wanted to review it in today's video because it's a new release. And I feel like a lot of you will love this because I know there are many of you out there that love that Herba Pura style DNA. So I wanted to give this a bit of an objective review, but that being said, this isn't a fragrance that will work for me, and I can't give it the thorough review that it deserves because I can't quite get past the strong fruits and musk within the fragrance. Do let me know if you've tried Valhalla. Even if you haven't, what do you feel about the notes? Is this a fragrance that you are going to sample? But as I've already mentioned, some of you will probably love this fragrance, some of you may not, but I wanted to mention it in today's video. It is definitely a mango dominant fragrance, but then other notes seem to not work for me within the composition. So those were all of the fragrances that I wanted to showcase in today's video. Please do let me know if any of them stood out to you and what your thoughts are. But I would love to know, what new fragrances have you sampled recently? Please do share your thoughts in the comments. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always. I hope to see you in a future video to come. Thank you so much, and goodbye.